So before we left, we set up a Django backend that has authentication, which we followed this tutorial that uses REST framework, JWT, and the cores. Where is it? This cores headers. And we did some tests by obtaining a user token with a logged in user with TA pre, and returns the user with an ID and the username. After I stopped recording, I went ahead and merged my Django app to my master by running, like, I git committed to my Django backend branch, git branch, my backend branch. I committed, I pushed git commit, entered a commit message, and then I git push origin backend, and then I switched to my master branch and I ran git merge backend, and I merged all the backend branch into my master branch. And then I went ahead and created, I went up 2 levels to my rock, paper, scissors directory, ls, and I created a new React app called, what was it called? npx create React app RPS front end. And that's that right here. I wanted to do that during break because it takes literally 2 minutes to run, and didn't want to do that. But I'm still in my virtual environment. Yep, I should have done a git ignore, but I was kind of rushing, so I didn't do a git ignore. So all that stuff got merged. The VNV, all that stuff, the Pi cache, all that stuff got merged into, and I pushed that up to my local branch in GitHub. But when we commit everything on this master branch, we'll do a git ignore file once we do that. If we get to that, yeah. So if we get to it, we'll do the git ignore, but you should always do a git ignore and push that stuff. So I'm still in RPS Django source. So I just want to deactivate because I'm still in the virtual environment, deactivate. So I'm outside of deactivated my virtual environment. Now let's go up a level. So I've got my Django project. And so this is all back end. And I've got my React front end. So front end. How should we do the front end? So the front end, we've got a couple of things we need to do. We need to log in a user, log out a user, create a game page, maybe. So a CD into RPS front end, ls. I got my node modules. I've got my README, I got my package.json. So let's just open up the front end. I'm gonna exit out of here, so we're just dealing with the front end. There's my source, app.js. So let's CD back. I'm going back up a level because I want to create a new branch called git checkout the front end. So I'm on my front end branch now. So CD into RPS front end and npm start. All right, keep going. So you could keep on following this app, create React app, my app. And you could follow this tutorial, but I'm going to do things differently just because I don't like the way they set up their front end. It makes sense, but I like having my logins and signups going to separate routes. So here's my front end. So let's create a home page first. So kind of like new site. Whoop. I'm going to create pages just to keep home page.js and RSC. What should I call this? H1 home page. And in my app, the main app, I'm going to just render the home page. There we go. It automatically imported it, so I don't need this anymore. Whoop. Don't need the logo. Let's see. So here's my home page. But I want to create some routes to like a /login, a /signup, a / like new game. So I need to create a login page first. Login.js, RCS. Let's go to H1 login. So in here, how do I create routes again? What do I need for a route? So
React Router DOM.
Correct. I need React Router DOM. So I'm going to npm install React Router DOM. And then once that's done, I'm going to import browser. Well, once it's done, I'll import everything. Cool. So import browser, doesn't automatically do it. Browser, router, as router. Let's do switch and route from React Router DOM. So in here is where I'm going to want to do router. And I'm going to do a div here. It's all about the divs. Format. So I've got my home page, which I'm probably going to have like some links to on the top. It's going to be like the nav bar. I could create a separate nav, but just for this purposes, the home page is going to have nav links. And then I need switch. So all my everything, all the route, my front end routes will go within the switch statement. So let's go route to login component equals login. And then I have to import login from pages/login. So in my home page, I want to link to my login. So nav, what should I do? Span. H2, rock, paper, scissors. And then I'm going to have link link. Oh, shoot. So I want to link to login and a link to maybe sign up. And then I need two login. Come on. Sign up. And let's see, let's refresh. Oh, we get an error because the server's not running. No, we probably gonna get an error because that's always fun. The link is not defined in the home page. So line 8, line 9, line 8, line 9. So I have to import link from React Router DOM. All right, I got link and sign up. Yeah, I guess that's fine. I just want to see if that does anything. Cool. It's on the same line now. Could add some margin, but if I click link, why does login render right there? Oh, does anybody know why login is rendering right there, which is my login component?
I think if you right click it and inspect it, you can see what part of the code it's in.
So so if I right click, inspect, so it's my login page. I know it's my login component is being rendered. It's because I'm not utilizing the right properties in my route. So it's not to, it's path. So if I do that, there we go. But I want it to be the exact path. There, so I've got my login, got my sign up. So that right now there is no sign up page. But when I click on the login, it goes to the login page. And in my login page is where I want to type in a username, type in a password, click submit, make an API request to my Django backend, and have it retrieve a token with that user, with a user object with an ID in my username. So that's the data flow. So in my login, I can say, create a form. Is it input? And then I can, let's see. Whoa. Yeah, let's make it a little, so input, it's type equals text, placeholder, your username, and then name equals username. So I've got my username. Let's add a label. Username. Cool. I'm gonna format document a little bit. And then same thing down here with password. Whoop. So type. So for the input, for the password should be password. Enter your password. Password. Let's have these on separate lines. My document. So at the very end, we need a button, or we can do input. I like using buttons. Login. Now, so since the button is within the form, I can do type. It's a submit button. And now within my login, I need some function that logs in. So handle login. Since I am in a functional component, console log, I can handle login. Event, so event.prevent default. So I don't want it to like automatically refresh. And then I just want a console log event.target dot the name of the input, so username dot value, and then I want event.target dot password dot value. So I'm grabbing the username from the name of the input element, and I'm grabbing, it's called password. It's because it's the name is password. If I call this something else, anything else, it should still work. So it says handle login is assigned a value but never used. So in my form, on submit, I want to handle login. Save it, no errors. So when I log in and click submit, I should see the username and password in the console. So here's my console, TA preet 123. In my login on line 8 and 9, I see my username and password. Is everyone with me so far? What questions do you have about what I just did? All I did was create in my app, and in my the highest level of my app, in my app.js, similar to what we did in new site, I have my routers, which will handle my switch statements, and then my route tag, which will going to this specific route, will render this login component. Every page will automatically render the home page as of right now, because it comes into here within my router, renders the home page automatically, and then which with whatever route I would go to determines whether or not, or determines what component I'll render. Right now, I'm only at the login page. Sign up page, there is no sign up. Click login.
Hey, Todd,
Yep.
I did have a question. I can't remember using switch statements before. Can you explain them a little bit?
So we use switch statements. Switch statements allow you to switch between what components to render at what specific URL path. So anything within the switch will always have like a route, exact path equals sign up. And then the component that will render at that sign up will be like a sign up component that we have yet to build yet. So within the switch is where all your routes will be contained within your app for your front end. So if you want to go to a different URL, when you click a link and you want to go to some other URL, and you want a specific component to render at that URL, this is where, within the switch statement, is where you'll put this route. We'll put that logic.
So what were we doing before when the routes weren't in the switch statement?
What do you mean?
I think we're using like browser router or something like that, and then putting all the routes within that.
Was that not how the new site was done?
No, this is the first
No,
time
new
I
site
think
we
we're
just
seeing
had,
switched.
Oh. Let's see if you even need a switch statement. Oh, yeah, you might not even need switch statements. Cool. Does browser router already have that built in? Oh, I guess you don't need switch statements. Cool, that works. I want to see what switch statement, why would I use, because I've always used switch statements. Why not switch?
I mean, later when you're already logged in, you won't need to show that other stuff, right? So switch statement hides other routes, I believe.
Switch. There's a route exclusively in contrast. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah, you can use switch or not use switch. Depends. I'm used to using switch just because that's how I learned it, but this works too. Uniquely that it renders a route exclusively. Cool. All right. Keep moving on. So TA pre 1, 2, 3. At this point in my login page, I want to create an API or like a user API that reaches out to my Django backend and then retrieves that user token and everything, and then returns that back. So how do we do that? So just like we were doing previously, we can do API in our source, do API, then we can have a user API.js. And then in our user API, we can have a login, like const login, that accepts a user object, which is literally just username and password. And then we can fetch, return, we can fetch. And what route do we want to go to grab that logged in user on the Django backend? Do you remember that route that we created? So let's look.
Token auth.
Token auth. So if we go into our backend, Django, here, utils, this token auth route. So a token auth route, user API, we can do, what is it, HTTP colon, is it S or colon, local host. Yeah, what is it? Local host.
3,000 to 8,000.
8,000, right? Token auth. That looks right. And then we want to pass in. Oh. We want to make a method. It's going to be a post request. We got headers, content type, application, JSON, and then in our body, we want to JSON stringify the user object. So in here, then we actually want to export default login. You could do login, but if you just do login, it's essentially the same thing. So before I actually go to that route, I just want to make sure this API even gets to this backend. I want a console log user object. So in my login page, I need to import user API from, is it upper level API / user API? And then in here, let's create a let user equals username and password. So I've got this user object that has a username and password, and I set that to user. And now I want to, was it user API dot login user. Why is that throwing an error? Oh, shit. There we go. I just want to see if this works. So if I type in ta-preet 123, there's my username and login. Cool. Now I can send that back to the backend. All right. Should I do that then, or let's do async await? Async. And well, before we get to that, let's just even see if our backend. So user object, return. Then we can do that then res. Let's actually just return this. See what happens. See if we get like an error or anything like that. But what do we first need to do with our backend? It's currently not running.
Run
Right.
it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. So I'm gonna actually open another window. CD desktop kilo challenges. Which one is this? Rock paper scissors. RPS rock paper scissors. Django. Less CD RPS underscore Django ls. So Python manage.py run server. Oh, son of a bee sting. Oh, I know why. Why did it throw an error?
We didn't install a module.
Yep, no module REST framework, JWT. So I need to ls source VNV then activate. Hopefully this works. Cool. So far, so good. Let's keep this in this window. So we got the user object coming through, comes here to this fetch token auth. It's a post request, headers, content type, body, JSON stringify, user object. So if I refresh this, and I type in GA hey, my Amazon package is coming. Post, unsupported media type, user API. What does that mean? Why is that? Haven't seen that error before. User object. Token auth, HTTP. I want to run local server, localhost 8000, and go to token auth, token.
I think they're not sending a JSON, they're sending a form. You know how that's another type, the HTML form? But I'm not sure, because I had that similar issue with our previous examples with the courses and everything, wines.
Interesting.
But that's just a guess, I'm not sure.
Refresh.
Do you want to open a network tab and then inspect what kind of post request being sent?
Yeah, let's do that. Network. Plain text. That's
Oh, it's not even sending a JSON.
huh.
Can we see the headers?
Headers, post, unsupported.
Can we see the request top?
The what?
Oh, the request headers, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean,
Request headers.
oh yeah, it's sending a text instead of JSON.
Interesting. Body, JSON stringify.
Is it line number 4 supposed to be headers? By any chance?
Oh. Look at that. Shout out to the QA.
Word.
TA pre 1, 2, 3. Cool. Nothing happened. That's a good thing. But let's see right here. Post to, so we actually had a successful 200. But we're not actually really doing anything. Dot then. I don't even know if we need a dot then. Let's see. Let's do the async awake here. Async. Let response. Let response equals user async. Oh, wait. Let data equals response.json. Let's just console log data. Refresh. GA pre 1, 2, 3. All right, we have a promise that's pending. I'm going to do a dot then. Res. GA pre 1, 2, 3. Promise pending. Login at 15. Does this work? JPreet. Typer JSON. All right. Just console log this response. So a lot of it's just going through. Okay, here we go. Cool. I got the response back. So we have our user token and our user with an ID username. Now what can we do with this stuff? Now?
So we send it back to them?
So we're sending this back to we're sending this to the front end.
Oh, yeah. So now we store it in state?
Yeah, we can store it in state, or we can store it in local storage. Yeah, that's
And
actually, let's first store it in state. How do we store the user, or where did we store the user, whether the user is logged in or not, in new site 6? Does everyone remember that? It was a long time ago.
In the app?
In the app.js, right? Because we want to store it at the very top level so we can pass the user down to different parts of the application. Let's do some refactoring. Oh, but yeah, so we have our response, and we can actually just return response. And ideally, we're going to store this response into state somewhere, which is probably going to be at the app.js level. So instead of storing it in the state within login, let's refactor some of this and move all this to the app.js. So handle login. And then I'm going to import, so this is a functional component, use state. Const is logged in. Set is logged in equals use state. Initially it's false. Let's do another one. Let's just have the user set user. Initially it's null. So I've got handle login, completely moved it outside of the login component. But if I wanted to pass the handle login component into this component here, does anyone remember kind of how to do that? Props. And there's a way to do that because we can't just pass in props like here. We need to write a method called like render login. Its sole purpose is to return the login component with props passed down to here. So we can do handle login equals handle login. And let's also pass down a couple more things. Is the user logged in? Is logged in. And then user. And then in here, instead of component, we're going to use the property or the keyword prop render, and it's going to render login. So it's going to come down here. It's going to render this method. It's going to run this method, render login. It's going to come up here, execute it, and it's going to return this login component with handle login passed in as a prop, and the current app state is logged in and user. And right now it's saying user API is not defined. So up here, you can say import user API from API user API. Says pages login, hand in user. Okay. So in here, I'm passing props. And let's just console log props in our login page. All right, handle login. Let's just delete that for now. So here's our props. We have our handle login, which you're going to be using is logged in and user. So you do props dot handle login. I'm going to delete this user API to the login page. And is logged in is assigned a value but never used. Set user is assigned. Yep, that's fine. So now in our app.js, let's console log user, which is the state of the user, and console log is logged in and is logged in. So I'm refreshing. So app.js user is null, is logged in as false. If I type in TA pre 123, it still says user logged in is false and user is null. So console log, let's just make sure this response is still getting back okay. TA pre 123. Oh no. What just happened? So came into here. Did it come into here? Handle login. Props.handle login. Oh, handle login. So TA pre 123. So I get my user token and my user back in this response right here. So now in here, I can say like set is logged in to true. And I can say set user is response dot user. Let's see this. TA pre 123. Oh no. If you want to keep this meeting open. All right. So I've got the users right here, ID, username TA pre, and is logged in as true. But when I refresh it, it logs me out. So this is where local storage comes in. I can set the local storage to that token. So I can come in here, local storage dot set item. It takes in two parameters like rock, paper, scissors token. I can set it to response dot token. So if I refresh, logged out, I say TA pre 123. Got my user logged in. It's true. Local storage. There's my RPS token. So now if I refresh, it says I'm logged out right now. But if I look at my local storage, that token is still there. So in my backend, where's the backend? Django backend, URLs. Whoop. We got token, RPS, and then my app. If I go to current user, I grab the current user from views. It says determine the current user by their token and return their data. So I can pass in I can pass in that token, perhaps, and it's going to return that user. So let's see how that works. So if I want that user to log in, so right now, like my front end is saying it's logged out, but in local storage, I've got my user token. Maybe in my front end, I want to check to see whether or not in local storage that RPS token exists. And if it does, run and do an API request to this RPS / current user. And I can pass in that token. So let's look at the views. Do I have current user in here? So current user just takes in a token. So what method will fire right when I go to the app to see if a user is logged in or not? What hook will fire when I click refresh?
Effect.
Use effect. Yes. So I can come up here, use effect, or if you turn this into a class component, it would be component mount. So I've got this method called use effect that takes in, and then in here it's going to like check to see if user is logged in by checking local storage for RPS token. So I'm just going to write a method that does that. So I can say like const get logged in user. And then I can write an if statement. If local storage dot get item. So get item takes in a key. Shucks. What is the name of the key? RPS token. I'm going to console log true. Is logged in. Is anything? All right. So if I refresh this, oh, I got to call this. So this get logged in user should be executed. Get logged in user, execute it. So right here it says true. So my user should be logged in, but right now it's false. So if the logged in user, I can perform an API request to get the current user. So get logged in user. So in here, I'm going to need to create another API request called const get logged in user. And in here, it takes in a token. And then it returns fetch. And what's the URL that I have to dispatch to or make an API request to? It's not this token OAuth, token auth. It's this, the app, RPS, / current user. And then, again, I need, there's not a whole lot I need here. So does it say in here, passwords, API? So I'm here in the tutorial to see how to get a login user. Localhost core current user. So in this componented mount, which since this is a class component, they're using componented mount. They're doing a little bit differently, is logged in. That's actually probably what I'm going to do instead of app dot is logged in. So I need to make a fetch request to this core user, and all I need is this headers. And I'm just going to also just include content type because I like to. Application / JSON. So instead of JWT, I'm going to pass in the token. So they're grabbing the local storage from the back end. I'm passing in the token into the API. So get user logged in, token. So in our app, in the where is it? Is user logged in? Actually, I think I'm going to go back to what I did. So if this exists, I'm going to execute this. So I can do, I'm going to do async await. Async let response equals await user API dot get logged in user local storage this. And then let data equals response dot JSON and console log the response, or I'm sorry, console log data. So in here, so if this local storage if this token exists, then I'm going to make an API response request by passing in this token. I can see it if I type in my React app. Oh no. Oh, I don't know what the hell's going on. Web app default get logged in is not a function. So my user API did not export it. Get logged in user. Sign up. So it comes in here already for whatever reason. local storage. Say local storage dot get item RPS token. See what gets returned. Oh, get item. So I get that back when I pass in that. So if I refresh, current user 401 unauthorized. Why does it tell me that?
I think your session has ended, but since you still have it in local storage, that token is kind of invalid, so you have to log in again.
Oh. So user true, but it's running that again. Let's see, get you logged in user. I'm just gonna do this to prevent that from running a million times. I'm gonna console log that and just console log the response. Okay, here we go. Response. And then I can, oh wait, console log data. See if this works. Cool. So the response is here. And then I do .json, async await, JSON, I get my user back. So I'm going to delete this stuff. Now I've got my data. Now what can I do to it? I can literally just do, is it? Oh. Set is logged in to true. And set user, is it response.user? That would be data. I think it's just user, right? Or it's just data. Cool. So here, is logged in is true now. Does anybody have any questions about me storing the token in local storage, and then I'm grabbing that logged in user when the app initially fires, and then I'm running this get logged in user API, which I was just following here in the tutorial. What questions do you have? Now, if I wanted to have the logged out user, so in here I've got props, I've got login. I can do some like logic here. Is props dot is logged in. Maybe not is logged in. Do that. Otherwise, button log out on click equals, I'm going to props dot handle log out, which doesn't exist yet. Let's say, oh, so I got an error because there has to be a single encapsulating JSX. So if user is not logged in, render this login form. But if the user is logged in, have a button that says handle logout, which I have yet to create. So in my render login, I can say like const handle logout, which literally just sets set is logged in to false, set user to null. And I can also do local storage dot set item RPS token to like null. That might run some errors because it says local storage get item RPS token. It'll be a stringified. So I can just do like doesn't equal null for right now, just to hack it. So handle logout. I can pass in as a property in my render login page, or in my login component. Let's see if this works. TA pre 1 2 3. Cool. Log out. Say local storage. Token is null, length 1. TA pre 1 2 3. Local storage. Now my token is that token again. And I can pass that around my app. Does anybody have any questions? I'll pause for questions there. And that is just the authentication part, I guess. And now the easy part happens, which is you can create another page, like a game.js, RCS. Oh no. H1, play, rock, paper, scissors. And then handle props. Don't really need to handle props there. And then our app.js, we can do like, instead of, we do play game component game. Game is not defined. Game. In my home page, how's my home page at? Let's do another, I can have like a link to play game. And I can only, so in here, I can be like, is my home page, where is it? So in my home page, I'm going to say like is logged in equals is logged in. So my home page, if is logged in, the pass is logged in as props is logged in. So if the user is logged in, it's going to show this game to play. So refresh. User is logged out. So now I can play this game. That link comes up. I can go to play game. And now you can start playing rock, paper, scissors. Stuff like that. What questions do you have? This tutorial is pretty straightforward as far as the back end goes. I'd create a separate sign up form, but you could easily follow this and do the same thing. I like to have my separate login route and a /sign up route to handle different functionality of my app. So I'm logging in, JPreet, 1, 2, 3, log out. I can go play now. I play my game. Now I can log out. And now obviously I would change to that login to like a log out button and like not have a sign up if I'm logged in. So like is logged in, not is. So log in, sign up, but once I log in, my sign up page should go away. I can log in and just play. Anybody have any questions? Nothing? All right, I am going to stop the recording.